In Prometheus, we are introduced to the mysterious statuesque engineers and their biomechanical technology on LV-223. But then in Alien Covenant, we see something very different. Smaller, more human-like engineers living in a city with ancient architecture, far removed from the cold and rigid designs seen in Prometheus. So who are the Planet 4 inhabitants, and is it their homeworld? Today we're breaking down everything we know to finally make sense of the Planet 4 engineers and their connection to the ones found on LV-223. After Covenant's release, there was a lot of debate about whether the inhabitants of Planet 4 were actually engineers at all. They lacked the towering physiques, the black soulless eyes, and the biomechanical suits that appeared to be fused to some of the LV-223 engineers. And instead, they appeared smaller, with human-like eyes and simple clothing. But despite their differences, there's overwhelming confirmation that these are indeed engineers. To begin with, Ridley Scott has referred to them as engineers in his director commentary for Covenant, and in interviews like the one with Yahoo UK, where he said, David had gone there to see what they were like, and don't forget, he was already pretty dismayed by the inadequacies of the human race, so he wanted to end that in some shape or form because he didn't like us. Then the same thing happened with the engineers. He thought that they were inadequate as well, which is what's said in the movie, and therefore he wants to get rid of them as well, and in doing that, he fundamentally left himself on his own. He's also verified that the planet is where the giants of LV-223 came from, and that they regularly travel to and from the planet, implying that they, along with the Planet 4 engineers, are its true inhabitants. Production materials also back this up. The Art and Making of Alien Covenant book refers to the city as where the engineers live, with production manager Dean Hood describing it as their main base, the size of Manhattan. Even the actors who played the P4 inhabitants were told that they were portraying engineers, with one of them, Billy Mansell, stating that they were called engineers and that the costume designer specifically referred to them as her engineers. Concept artist Matt Hatton shared an image to Instagram that is used in the film, but it's an alternate version with different text on it that reads, "While the engineers have definitely taken steps to evolve their genetic structure and durability, they curiously maintain a strange deference to the sanctity of their original pre-technological state. Strange for a civilization who has moved through industrial technical considerations shown in their early structures, to the evolution inherent in their eventual aesthetic as a spacefaring culture. One can only assume that they ironically treat themselves as they do their cities, as cultural and developmentally historical documents to be treated with reverence." Concept artist Dane Hallett would also verify that they are in fact engineers in an interview with Mr. H Reviews, and David himself refers to Planet 4 as their home in the Crossing.
"We were able to activate their ship and set course for their homeworld. We were finally going to meet our creators."
But why do they look so different? Unfortunately, we're currently in the early part of 2025 as of making this video, and to date, no definitive answer has been given as to why the engineers on Planet 4 have a different look to them when compared to the ones on LV-223. But I've always believed that the larger versions were genetically altered by the pathogen, and enhanced for space travel, combat, or experimentation. By joining with the pathogen, they were given a larger, more muscular frame, large blackened eyes, bright white skin, and darkened veins. The pathogen has its origin in Plagiaris praepotens, the substance injected by xenomorph facehuggers, and its influence appears in the biomechanical suits that some of them wear. Early scripts and behind-the-scenes material even refer to these suits as pressure suits, implying that the biomechanical features aren't natural, but a result of their advanced technology. The idea of genetic enhancement is also supported by Alien Bloodlines, a recent Marvel comic, where synthetic suggests that others before the humans have used the black pathogen to try to improve themselves, clearly referring to the engineers. Billy Mansell hinted at this distinction, stating that there was speculation that the Prometheus engineers were more like a military type rather than our more civilian look. Prometheus gives us a glimpse at the possibility of genetic variation in a deleted version of the sacrificial engineer scene, where we see the two different types of engineers together, one large and imposing, and the others who are smaller with elders among them. On Planet 4, the buildings show a scale for both human and larger sized beings. There is what appears to be one of the engineers from Prometheus that is skinned in David's lab, and there's the Mother Juggernaut seen hovering above the central plaza. And if it's anything like the Juggernaut ships, It can be operated by a human-sized crew, but its scale is meant for something larger. So some of them were present on P4 when David and Elizabeth Shaw arrived. Is Planet 4 their homeworld? Well, this is where things get a bit more complicated. David refers to it as their home planet, and Covenant's novelization calls them the original engineers. The art book for Covenant also confirms that Shaw and David were searching for the Engineer Homeworld, and they found it. And in Paradise Lost, the only verified early draft of the film, the planet is clearly labeled as Engineer Homeworld. But not everyone agrees. Dane Hallett said that while he was working on the film, that Planet 4 was just a colony of engineers. And Damon Lindelof, one of the writers of Prometheus, suggested that Covenant wasn't actually showing us their true home, saying, "I think that one of the conversations that we had at the end of the Prometheus is Shaw and David have basically locked in on the coordinates of the planet where the engineers came from. What does that place look like? Ridley called it paradise. What happens when they land on that planet? It doesn't feel like they've gotten there yet in Covenant. Covenant felt like it was a detour prior to them arriving at the place of origin, so I don't want to spoil any place that he might still be wanting to go. But the conversations that he and I had about where the story goes next were largely about a place where the engineers were from, and less the events of Covenant." Ridley Scott, while clear on the fact that they are engineers, seems to dodge the question when asked if P4 is their homeworld. He's verified that the LV-223 engineers did come from there, and when asked about the planet, his answers are vague, like this one here. "I wanted it to be a more Teutonic version of Earth, in that its perfection is in the mountains and the trees. Majesty which would go hand in hand with the majestic proportions of the engineers and the world that they had." Some argue that since the engineers of LV-223 possess advanced biomechanical technology, while Planet 4 lacks it, this suggests that the planet isn't their true home. But Dane Hallett told Mr. H that the engineers there had evolved beyond commerce, and that they are now able to fully immerse themselves in the arts, leaving their modified brothers to travel the stars, spreading life and destroying worlds. What we do know is that the engineers of Planet 4 are real engineers, not a seeded race, but engineer colonists who have settled the planet. The LV-223 engineers came from here, and I believe that they underwent genetic modifications to become something greater. As for whether Planet 4 is the true homeworld, that's still up for debate. The film, the novelization, and an early draft suggest that it is, while behind-the-scenes comments and concept art imply that it could just be one of many engineer settlements. But one thing is clear, the engineers are far from extinct. Ridley Scott has said that the surviving engineers will return to find their world decimated, setting up a future conflict. And in Alien Romulus, we're introduced to the offspring, a human baby exposed to compound Z01, a form of Plagiaris praepotens, the substance that the engineer's pathogen is made of. The baby had both xenomorph and engineer traits, with darkened eyes like the pathogen engineers, while the head and body were more like the people of Earth and Planet 4. Will we ever see the civilian or smaller engineers again? Well, Ridley Scott is supposedly working on another prequel after the success of Alien Romulus. And if it does happen, perhaps we'll learn more about the inhabitants of Planet 4. Are they really the original engineers or just another colony? And what do you think about the differences between the two? Thanks for watching, take care, and I hope to see you next time.